Mine still says start.
Oh, really?
You know,
Mine says it's recording.
okay. I'll press start as well.
Yeah, it's not going to hurt.
Good.
So I've got 2 o'clock, so we may as well get started.
Okay, great.
All right. So welcome. I'm Anne Marie Townsend, City Manager of Lewis, and
And I'm Rosemary Hardiman, Mayor of Town of Bethany Beach. Good afternoon and welcome.
so we're going to talk to you about orientation for newly elected officials. I think we've both learned a lot from each other as we've been working on this. So I think we're both going to be changing some things up moving forward based on what we're learning from each other. So um, we'll start with going over the agenda. We'll talk about why it's important to have an orientation program, what you need to cover in your orientation, and then we'll talk about um, both Bethany Beach and Lewis and how we have done our programs. And then we'll talk about expanding the idea to how you orient your boards and commissions. So with that, um, you know, I believe everything I've read, and I believe it to be the case from experience, is a strong orientation program is important to the foundation of that staff and elected official relationship. And having a strong orientation program where people understand the legal framework, understand the roles, and kind of then cultivate that respect for those things is really important. Um, it also gives you the opportunity for the new elected officials to meet your key staff members, and they can put a face with a name and know who does what. And then, very importantly, they understand both the legal framework and the structure of the organization and the protocols and how they're supposed to communicate with the staff and with each other. Did you have anything to add there, Rosemary?
No, I'm going to include some of that in the next
Okay.
slide. And,
Okay.
oh,
Oh,
okay, so we're going to, oh, I'm sorry.
did I skip a slide? Okay, here we go.
No, that's it. Yeah.
Okay,
We'll
there
start with the Bethany Beach approach, which is a little bit different from the city of Lewis. And as Amory said, we've learned a lot from each other, and we're going to modify some of ours based on some of the things that I found that the city of Lewis does. But ours is three parts. We have the operational, legal, and governance. Our dates are scheduled following the election, but prior to the first reorganization meeting. Sometimes we don't always meet that, and I think that it's important that to the extent possible, we do it before the reorganization meeting. Now, we have two sessions. We have one with the town manager and staff, and they cover operational issues. And then we have one with the mayor and vice mayor, and we cover the legal and governance issues, and we provide material for each. And I'll just give you a little bit of background as to why we have two sessions. Our town manager is just a wonderful human being, and he presents more the town manager's role as the things that are contained in the charter. You implement everything, the policies that the town council has passed. You hire and direct staff and do the administration parts of it, and you develop the budget and keep track of it and everything. But things like that he doesn't cover or things or he hadn't covered were things that are important to the relationship between the council and the town manager. For example, the town manager is the primary policy advisor basically to the town council. And if you have a great town manager, you're going to listen to him. And so he wasn't covering things like that. And it's very difficult for a town manager to say, well, I hire staff and the staff reports to me, and you're not supposed to direct staff. It gets kind of, it might get a little hairy there. So he felt it wasn't appropriate. He didn't feel that it was appropriate for him to tell the council what their role was. So what we did was, years ago this happened, they developed a protocol manual. A couple of the people who were on council at the time, and one of them, Lou Kilmer, is still on council. He's the vice mayor. They developed this whole protocol manual and sat down with the newly elected officials and went through it. And I have to give a lot of credit. I listened to Ms. Cheryl Orr yesterday, and it started me thinking that not only is this separate session beneficial in order to be able for us to sit down with the newly elected official and go through what we feel are important lessons we've learned, what their role is, but also in thinking about it, I realized that it gives them a sense of belonging. It's colleagues saying welcome. It's colleagues saying, your vote is as important as ours is, even though you're just starting out. And I thought to myself, I wanted to thank her because she got me started thinking about that there was an added benefit to doing it in two sessions that way. So I just wanted to point that out to you. And the next slide, can you do that? Or do I do it? Oh, I'm sorry. That was my, okay. All right, so the operational orientation, the town manager and the department head sit down with the newly elected official, and the town manager would go through an overview, the general overview of the town, the zoning map, the organizational chart, go through his role, and basically he does go through his role, as I pointed out earlier, from the charter. And we provide the nuances to that we feel the role that we feel is important to us that he fulfills. And then he also goes through challenges and priorities. Every town is different, and every town has different challenges and priorities. And for example, one of the big drivers of the big challenges in our town, and it's been this way for years, is nuisance flooding, and it's gotten worse. So that the whole northern section of the town, about a third of it, experiences about 10 to 12% days of nuisance flooding a year. And now that doesn't sound like much, but it comes down to about 5 to 7 weeks. And after two decades of doing different things to try and find solutions, we think we're finally there in the next 3 to 5 years. So we're looking forward to that. And also another challenge as other coastal communities and bay communities face is the seasonal challenge. And we basically have two towns. We have a winter town and a summer town. We have a winter town that has 41 employees, less than 1,000 people who live here. And we have a summer town that swells to about 20,000, 30,000 in the summertime, and we have to hire an additional 100 employees. So there are a lot of challenges that revolve around that, including pedestrian and bicycle safety. And of course, the growth in Sussex County is a major impact on Bethany Beach and other communities as well. So I think that's about it on that one. And we'll go to the operational orientation. Each manager, we had done it for a while where there was a big group together, the managers and the newly elected officials. But what the town manager has done recently with the orientation portion of it is to limit it. And what he does is have the newly elected official meet individually with the department heads. And that does a couple of things. It allows them to visit one-on-one, and the newly elected official is able to understand, that this is all the employee does, all the department head does, and basically how dedicated and how competent our staff is. And also, it allows them to ask questions that they might not ordinarily ask in a larger setting, thinking they don't want to waste everyone's time. So we've been doing that. And then when one person is finished, then they go and they get the next one and they bring that person in. So it's worked pretty well, having it a one-on-one rather than a group effort. Then the newly elected official also gets to tour our facilities. We have a town hall, police department that's part of the town hall. We have a water plant that's off-site, and we treat our own water, pump our own water, treat it, and pump it out to the public. We have a public work yards that is about a mile from here down Route 1 to the north. And we also have a town's off-site emergency operating facility in Frankfurt. And this again, when I talk about the value of town managers and what they do for a community and what they do to really help a town council, The offsite emergency operating facility was the brainchild of our town manager, and it arose following Sandy. We realized how lucky we were that we only came within fewer than 100 miles of having been devastated by Sandy, and it harkened back to the storm of 62. And so when the town was covered with sand and water. So what we did was we acquired property about 7 miles from town in Frankfurt. It's a 7-acre property. And to give you a landmark, it's situated right next to Salted Vines Winery. And there's no, it wasn't deliberately done that way, but that's where we are to give you a landmark. So we store equipment out there, and we've added offices so that if we do have an emergency, we can continue the town operations from the emergency facility. And again, that was the brainchild of a wonderful town manager. Okay, I'm on to the next one, Anne Marie. The next part is the mayor and vice mayor. And as I mentioned, we have a protocol manual. And by the way, if anyone wants copies of these, you can just get a hold of me. I'd be very happy to send you a copy of everything that we do. The protocol manual contains the applicable legal authorities. We have the charter provisions in there that relate to the role of the council and the role of the manager. We include applicable ordinances. We reference and talk about the comprehensive plan and also the state code. We go through things like the manager form of government, the council manager form of government, and the separate and distinct yet complementary roles. And we talk quite a bit about it. And the fact that our role also is theirs is administration, ours is governance. And in the governance, you have, we represent the citizens. We set the vision, the priorities, direction, financial plan. We do the policy making, and we have stewardship of our assets. We monitor what's going on and be able to adjust accordingly. And we have a great deal of communication. One of the things that the town manager likes, and we recommend, highly encourage each of our newly elected officials to do, is to take the time either once or twice a month to sit down with the town manager. And this is important for a couple of reasons, because as it says here, we represent the citizens, and our town manager likes feedback. And so what we do is he'll always ask, what do the people think? What are the issues out there? What are they saying to you? How is this working? How is that working? How can we do it better? And also, it's an opportunity for him to bounce his ideas off of us individually. And he never brings anything to council that he doesn't think he has a good chance of getting it through, that he thinks that the public would accept and we would accept. And so he'll ask us too, well, what do you think your constituents would think of this? And, do you have any thoughts on how it can be done better? So there's always that two-way communication, and we bring our thoughts to him too. I mean, I used to go in there, and I still do, with a long list of things. Here's some ideas, and what about this? What about that? So we encourage communication, and we take the time and the effort to sit down with one another individually with the town manager and just talk things over. And that develops the strong relationship as well with our town manager. The town manager, of course, one thing I wanted to mention, and I'll provide a copy of it, link to it at the end, are these two books here. They're books by George Cuff, and it's called Cuff's Guide for Municipal Leaders. One of them is Volume 1, a Survival Guide for Elected Officials, and Volume 2 is The Case for Effective Governance. And it's written by a Canadian for Canadian municipalities.
Am I on the wrong slide?
No, you're on the right one.
Okay. I thought there was one that had the books on it. So.
No, that's the last one. I'm going to provide that at the end. Okay. But it provides, these are two very good volumes. We provide them to every newly elected official, and it goes through a lot of detail on what governance is about and the relationship between the town manager and the elected officials. It's very well written, very well done, very well organized, so I highly recommend it. Okay, now I'm ready. Okay, now the protocol manual, we also go through with the town council something that is a little bit easier for council to talk about with newly elected officials, and not as easy for a town manager to talk about, and that is the relationship between council and staff. And we do encourage dialogue. We do, in this town, we have a great deal of respect and a great deal of gratitude for the employees we have here. They are committed, they're dedicated. We have many longtime employees, which tells you a lot about management. And we do talk to them. But the thing is that any request for work to be done or information goes through the town manager, and we all respect that because there needs to be a central point in order for the town to run efficiently. Otherwise, we'd be off in different directions and wasting people's times. We do have two exceptions, and the first is during the budget preparation cycle. Our finance director um, is just an incredible person, and she is able, Janet Connery, and she is able to synthesize and be able to explain the most complicated budget and finance concepts to people who are financially challenged. And believe me, there are some. But she does a wonderful job. Her door is always open, and especially during that period. There are two exceptions to that, and that is if there is anything involving policy or spending decisions, we're asked to talk to the town manager about that rather than Ms. Connery. So we do that, and we all honor that. And also department heads who are assigned to committees, the understanding is that they can be called upon to do work that is related to that committee. And out of courtesy, what the committee chairs do is to send a note to the town manager to let them know. And also, our staff is very good at reporting back to the town manager, just so that he's aware of what they've been asked to do. And I'll go on to the next one here. FOIA. Now, this is a big one, as you all know. I think FOIA is probably, and the requirements of FOIA are probably one of the biggest adjustments for new council members. And that's because we're used to talking with one another and trying and figuring out or finding out what other people think. But it becomes a problem when you come on town council and there are decisions before the council that you really want to talk about with other people, but you really can't. We had found that for example, when I'd be sending out an email updating people on something that was coming up or providing additional information, right away, people, God love them, would send me back an email, send it to everybody and saying, this is what I think about that. So what I've taken to doing is sending everything out blind copy to people so that if they automatically respond, they're not responding to everyone. So we've kind of taken care of it a little bit in that way. The other thing that happened is that I really tell people this too, is to be careful of what you say in an email. Do not say anything in an email. We've all heard this about correspondence. Do not say anything in an email that you would not want published in the front page of the local newspaper. And I've had experience with this during the time I've been on council. When we've also encouraged them to only use their town email address for all council business, for all government business, and also I caution them about how they phrase things. Because back in 2015, the town had acquired one of the original homes in Bethany Beach that had been used as a post office for a period of time, but was also a family summer vacation home. It was located 3 lots down from a paper street, and the paper street went down the middle of homes that were on this side and homes, backyards backed up to it. And over the course of time, as you can imagine, people got the feeling that this was their private property. And so when we had a hearing on it, we did everything we were supposed to, and we ended up voting to move the house to the paper street, to a portion of it, and to open it as the town museum. Well, very shortly afterwards, we were sued. And one of the things that happened was that during the discovery process, all of my emails were subpoenaed. And so basically, someone does have the authority. They come in electronically and they go through all of your emails. And if your emails, your town emails, are mixed in your private email address, then you're going to expose them as well. So it's just a lesson learned, just to be careful what's in the emails and to also be sure you use just the town emails for that. We go through the protocol manual also goes through a step-by-step example of meetings. So in other words, you know how to make motions, and then it gives you the order in which things are typically presented, you know, and what to do, and different things like that. It's also for hearings and workshops. We provide examples in there for that. We loosely follow Robert's Rules of Order, and the guiding principle basically is that all members have a full and fair opportunity to be heard, as well as members of the public. And the only time we do limit members of the public, we find, is during hearings when we expect a lot of people to show up and they're asked to sign up and to limit their remarks to 3 minutes, as other people typically do, and not to duplicate remarks. But other than that, we haven't had a problem. And as I said, we loosely follow Robert's Rules of Order, but we really haven't found that to be any type of an issue. And then we go through expectations. And this, as you can imagine, is easier coming from one council person to another. We expect people to show up. We expect people to be prepared. The people elected you to represent them, and it's a responsibility. It's an awesome responsibility, and it's a privilege. And I had somebody had run for council a couple of years ago, and they came to me and they said, "Oh, so and so who had been on council before said, oh, it's very easy. You don't have to do anything. The staff does everything. You just show up and vote." And I quickly said, well, you know, that's not quite the way it works. So we do impress upon people that they are expected to prepare. If they have questions, by all means, they can talk to the town manager or anyone else who proposed the issue. And we expect them to attend and participate. And one of the things, you know, people aren't fooled. The voters know when they come to meetings, they know who's prepared and who isn't prepared. And so this is part of their responsibility. We always want them to, they're doing it for their friends and neighbors, and they're representing them. And if they're not going to do it, then they shouldn't be on the council. Okay, the next slide. We also go through general decorum. We go through this with committees as well, and we focus on civility, refraining from abusive conduct, any personal attacks, verbal attacks, to listen courteously, attentively, and tolerantly. And one of the things, the way things are going, basically, you see groups that are meeting and they are so verbally abusive to one another. And even if people get up at our meetings, and we've had occasion for that, where people get up at our meetings and they're angry or verbally abusive, we try to not give them anything to shoot at. You set the civility. If you don't respond in kind, you find very often that they calm down too. And we've let people know that we are not going to stand for that kind of behavior. It's not going to be, it can be in the rest of the country, but not in Bethany Beach. So people have been pretty good about that. And even people who get up who disagree with council and are trying to make their opinion heard, they seem to be very respectful and civil as well. So we're very happy about that. We go through, in the ethics portion too, we go through confidentiality. And we also go through conflicts of interest. We have used the Delaware Code, Chapter 29, Title 29, Section 5805(2). It's used for state employees, and we've kind of adopted it for our own because we've had situations where a council member will say, well, I can't vote for that. One time we had acquired wetlands that were next to his home, and if he felt if he voted for that, it would be to his benefit. And so he wanted to recuse himself, but we use this as a guide. And basically, if he wasn't going to benefit any more than anyone else who was similarly situated, he didn't have to recuse himself. So we've incorporated that into our conflicts of interest as a guide. Other than that, there would be so many instances when something benefited people in one part of the town and you were part of that, and it would just not work that way. We're thinking now too. We have extended this to training new committees, not this portion of it, but the first portion, the organizational, that the town manager does and the staff does. We started three. We formed three new committees 2 years ago, and they were basically people who have never had any experience with the town. We were grateful to have so many volunteers, and we before at the first meeting of each of those committees, the town staff, town manager and staff put on an organizational program for them to give them an idea of what the town does and how it works and what the parameters of their mission was, or their scope of their mission, so that they wouldn't be spinning their wheels unnecessarily. And they seemed to be very grateful for that. They learned a lot from it, and I think they were awed. Right now, we're thinking of providing some background information to people who register as candidates to run for office, and to let them know what's involved and what's expected. And if anyone out there, we haven't done anything like that so far, but if anyone out there has that type of information that they do provide for candidates, we'd be interested in seeing it. If you would share that, that would be great. And then my last slide here is Cuffs. The two books from Cuffs, Municipal Guide for Leaders. You can go on www.municipalworld.com, and I believe they are each $29.95. And then the other one, there was another book I found that was very helpful for me, even though we don't follow Robert's Rules of Order. It's called Mastering Council Meetings, and it's available through JurassicParliament.com. And that was something that was very helpful. It was kind of like walking you through each of the steps involved in Robert's Rules of Order. So I found that very helpful. So, just want to say that good governance just doesn't always happen. It requires thought, preparation, commitment, respecting one another's roles, and listening to one another. And it's not about me, and it's not about you. It's about it's about our sacred obligation to fulfill our responsibilities, to the oath we took, and to the town. So anyway, the result is worth it. And I turn it over to you, Anne Marie.
Thanks in the chat for the publications that Rosemary provided. The two of them, I put the links to Municipal World. The other one, oops, I put the wrong one in. The council meeting one, it's an Amazon link. So if you don't shop at Amazon, I understand it, but it's just an easy way to find it as well. So I'll talk a little bit about how Lewis has been doing orientation. We do things in two parts. We have a legal orientation where the newly elected officials meet one-on-one, or if we have two, it would be the two new ones and the solicitor, but they meet individually with the solicitor. We schedule the dates prior to the election and we share them with all the candidates. We hold just like Bethany Beach, we hold the orientation in that week or so between the election and the swearing in. And all elected officials are invited to attend the operational orientation. We do provide a binder with all of our orientation materials, and it's got a lot in it. And I've been very pleased when I've seen well after orientation, council members pull it out and refer to things in that binder. So the legal orientation is held with the new officials and the solicitor. So there's no quorum present. It's, an opportunity to have a very frank legal discussion. The solicitor reviews the city's code of conduct. Unlike Bethany Beach, we actually have a separate code of conduct from the state. So ours is in our code. So that gets reviewed. the Freedom of Information Act, which is always a big one because, as Rosemary said, especially people who have come out of private sector careers where they've never been inhibited from having discussions in private. It's kind of a rude awakening. He reviews the anti-harassment policy with them, and we do have our newly elected officials sign the anti-harassment policy. And there's a discussion of any pending legal issues. So if there's any pending litigation or kind of difficult things that they're going to have to be dealing with from a legal perspective, there's a general overview given. And then we have our operational orientation, and that is myself as the city manager and the department heads. It starts with me providing a general overview of the city and how it works. Everything from how you get your ID badge to the paperwork so that you can make sure that you get your quarterly stipend for serving. I talk about the legal framework, the charter, the municipal code, and the state code, and those areas that they're going to have most interaction with. The form of government being the council manager form of government, and we provide them with the city budget. And then each manager, and I do this too as I'm giving my overview, start with a personal background so that we talk a little bit about who we are so that they know us other than just that staff person, other than just being the department manager of the maintenance department or whatever. They know a little bit about our background, our family, and they talk about the key staff in their department and an overview of what their department does. We do provide communication or direction on communication with staff. As in Bethany Beach, we request that all requests for information, requests for projects go through the city manager. We sometimes have to remind people of that, but we also internally among our management staff have very good communication. So if there is something that's asked of a staff person, usually there's a follow-up with me before anything is done. One of the things I try to underscore is part of the reason we want the elected officials to come through me is there have been times where something's been asked of a staff person, but it might not be the right staff person. It might not be the right department. So that staff person is feeling a need to respond, but really it should be somebody else's role. So again, if they do forget, I try to gently remind them, but also we've got very good communication among our team to make sure that if something is asked, that I know what it is and give kind of the green light before anything major happens with it. And again, I will say the binder, it has, everything from your I-9 and W-4 and payroll forms to presentations, the PowerPoint presentations that each department will go over. We have an orientation manual. I was hoping to upload it and that you'd be able to download it from the site, but the files that are uploaded, I don't see where they can be downloaded from the portal. So if you are interested in our orientation manual, just let me know and I'm glad to share it. I know I sent it out to the city managers a while back. We give a copy of our code of conduct with a signature sheet, the personnel manual, the anti-harassment policy, all of that with a signature sheet so that they're aware, of their obligations there. And even though we don't do the anti-harassment training with this, that's done as part of the legal orientation, we include the slides in the binder. We provide a copy of the budget and a copy of the investment policy. The collective bargaining agreement with the police department, our FOIA policy, a listing of our committees, boards, and commissions. And if any of you have any knowledge of Lewis, we have a ton of committees, boards, and commissions. Valerie, if you could put your email address in the chat, I will definitely get you a copy of the protocol manual. And then I'm going to drop some links here in the chat of some of the articles and resources from ICMA that we that we share. It's just some articles on making the relationships work. Um, One is interesting, and I was hesitant the first time I put it in there, but I think it is an important thing because you never know what you're gonna get. Sometimes you don't know who's coming on. There's an article from Public Management Magazine called "The Outlier," and it's about coping with the nonconformist elected official, and it's just again to give them resources for um, how they can manage. Um, One of the other things we provide a book. I will drop this in the chat as well. It's Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised in brief. So it's a much thinner book than the Robert's Rules of Order. Similar to Bethany Beach, we don't strictly follow Robert's Rules of Order. We loosely follow it. And we want them to kind of know how to make a motion. Chair can't make a motion. Just some of those basics of how the meetings are run. And then we always make sure we include an evaluation form so that we can get their feedback and improve. One of the things, and Rosemary, you might want to chime in on this too. We have Rosemary and I have both talked about how we can expand this to adapt to our boards and commissions. Again, focusing on the points that are relevant to the boards and commissions. We are planning um, a training or a mandatory orientation for all members of our boards and commissions that will happen in the spring. But then I think we will have some sub orientations that are very specific to the roles of specific boards and commissions. So, but the things that are relevant to all of them, FOIA, code of conduct, anti-harassment policy, and the legal framework that is, for instance, your Board of Adjustment has both your local code and your state code thing. And we do try to also provide the information and access to the training provided by the Institute for Public Administration as well. I think that tends to be a very, very good resource. One of the other things that Rosemary and I did talk about, and I know that in my research when we were putting our orientation program together, I saw that there were a number of places that did this, is we had talked about perhaps doing some sort of an orientation program directed to candidates, so that before people file, or maybe after they file and before they are elected, they know what they're in for. They have a sense of what the time commitment is. They have a sense of what the reporting protocols are. And Rosemary, you might want to chime in on that because you found that would definitely help you in terms of getting people who are interested to actually file.
Oh, yeah, we talked about, Amory and I talked about this. We had a situation where um, at the last election, at the last minute, the one of the people who had been on council for a number of years did not file, and no one else had filed, so we had a vacancy. And then we had to have a special meeting, and we solicited candidates to send in a little bio and um, a paragraph or two about what they thought they could bring of value to the town and the council. And we got 7 applicants. So it went from 0 to 7. And then we had a special meeting at which they all appeared and had to answer a number of questions and presentations, et cetera. And one of the questions that was asked of each of them was, if you're so interested in running, why didn't you file to run before? And some of the answers were instructive. They were, well, we didn't we thought the town was running pretty well, and we didn't think there was any need for change. And some of them thought they didn't want to run against people who were friends, and others, in talking to them later, was there's a difference. They were fearful of running because they didn't know what was involved. And so it got us thinking about how can you make it, because these were all good people, how can you make it easier for people to not look at this as some awesome thing that they can't possibly do? And that was what we were talking about, Amory and I. That's what I was wondering, if anyone has experience with this out there, or anyone has done this, it would be helpful to know, because it would be good to let them know what's involved, even if you had a pre-filing um, a session for people who were interested. So we really don't know how to do it. We just see it as something that might be helpful for good people to know about, and so that they might be encouraged to run. That was, I don't know if that's your experience, Amory.
So we had gone since 2014 with no election until 2020. And in 2020, we both of the incumbents lost, and we had two new people come in. And of course, because of COVID, that election happened a little bit later. Our election is normally in May and was postponed until I think it was July. And then we had an election the next year, which 2021, and we had one person who did not run, and the other person who did run lost. So we had two more new people come on. So we have not found that that has been a barrier. I do think it's worth having that discussion, because I think that there are probably people out there who want to serve.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that approach could be adapted to boards and commissions as well. If you want to have an information session, I think one of the things, and with the opening session yesterday, we talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think we all experience where there's a vacancy on a committee, a board, or a commission, and everybody's like, okay, who can I think of? Who can I think of? And so you
Mm-hmm.
kind of go to the people that the
Mm-hmm.
people on the elected body or on that commission know, um, rather than casting a net to find out if there's interest in the community. So I think that there are ways to adapt something, you know, not as detailed as say this orientation program, but take some of the high points and for people who may be interested in either running for office or serving on a board or commission, so that we can start to generate interest beyond maybe the people who would have either come to mind or thought of it on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is what we have. So we're a little ahead of schedule, which I know is not the end of the world. So at this point, I would say, are there any questions? Anybody want to speak up? Anybody, drop a question in the chat? I will email Valerie our orientation program. And I do see Christine Ho, who used to be our local government management fellow, in the chat. And she actually worked with us in helping us put together our orientation program. And again, ours isn't static. We're working to build on it each time we use it. Because I do think, and one of the things we include in our orientation manual is kind of some hints from prior elected officials, so that people can get a sense of what people who have been in that position before them would suggest as survival. Okay, so Maureen says she has used the protocol manual for South Bethany. It's a great tool. And Marcia, and thank you, Maureen, and thank you, Marcia. So I'm sorry, Marcia, I'm having my eyes just failed me. Marcia said, I would like to provide newly elected officials information on DLLG's website. So I think we would be glad to provide you kind of the resources that we're using in our orientation, and to the extent that we can help you, we're glad to do it. So, and Rosemary, you don't mind sending your protocol manual to the people who have asked for it, right?
No, not at all.
Okay, Antonina and Valerie, we will send. You'll get emails from both me and Rosemary with the materials we've discussed. Um, and feel free. I mean, I'm going to tell you, we found what's our manual. We found something from somewhere else in the country and just adapted it. And there were large sections that needed to be rewritten, but it's also very it gives you the format. It kind of gives you the baseline to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So.
One thing I'll just point out that we do every year is just to ensure that people are looking at the protocol manual, we put it on the agenda for a November meeting in case anyone wants to make changes or updates because it's about 15 years old. So we're constantly making updates especially ones that relate to technology. And then it ensures that people kind of take a look at it and refreshes them a little bit.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, we thank you all for attending, and we hope you have enjoyed the conference thus far.
Thank you, everybody, and happy St.
Afternoon.
Patrick's Day.
Oh, yes, happy St. Patrick's Day.
Patrick's Day.